Snow was falling, soft and steady, the kind that muffled the world and made everything feel gentler than it was. I reached up to adjust a stubborn string of lights above the patio window, stretching just enough to make the cord snap into place without pulling the whole thing down. The plastic clips creaked faintly against the cold glass, and I smiled at the satisfying click when the last bulb settled. Inside, the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg drifted from the kitchen. Somewhere behind me, Nat King Cole was crooning through the Bluetooth speaker. It was the kind of evening that looked perfect from the outside, the kind people posted on Instagram with captions like cozy vibes or holiday magic. And for a long time, I believed in that magic. Or at least, I believed I could create it if I worked hard enough to hold every detail together. I'd spent the day baking cinnamon rolls from scratch, hanging garland, and triple-checking the guest list for the upcoming Christmas dinner. Kendra said it made me obsessive, but I like to think of it as intentional. Careful, thoughtful, the kind of effort you pour in when you're building something meant to last. We'd been married 9 years, Kendra and I, and in that time, I'd built more than a life. I built a home, a rhythm, a quiet promise I carried into every holiday, every argument, every morning coffee. I've got us. The patio window creaked as I nudged it open for air. The chill hit my face like a splash of cold water, but I didn't mind it. I liked the contrast, the way winter made warmth feel earned. I leaned out a little, just checking how the icicles were forming along the roofline. That's when I heard it. Their voices. Unfiltered. Casual. Like I wasn't a breath away. Bianca's voice came first, sharp, always too loud when she was drinking. I can't believe you're spending Christmas with that loser. I blinked. Then Kendra's voice answered, without hesitation, not even the pretense of hesitation. Just until he pays off the house and co-signs my business loan. My hand, still holding the window frame, tensed. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I waited, hoping ridiculously, stupidly, that there was some context I was missing. Some joke, some misunderstood sentence meant to be sarcastic or ironic or goddamn anything other than what it was. But Bianca just snorted and said, I'm ready to take my share too. That was the moment. The moment the lights I just fixed blurred in my peripheral vision. The moment the carols felt hollow. The moment something deep inside my chest cracked open, quietly, completely. And not because I didn't expect pain. Not because betrayal was new. But because I had believed I was the exception. That after everything, after years of late nights and financial juggling and showing up when no one else did, I was the one who had earned the benefit of the doubt. Instead, I was the placeholder. The wallet. The background hum. I stood there, fingers wrapped around the cold sill, my knuckles tightening until they turned pale. For a brief second, a dangerous one, I imagined throwing the window wide open and demanding answers. Shouting. Breaking the illusion right there on the frosted lawn. But then I saw them through the gap in the curtain, Bianca swirling wine in her glass, Kendra laughing softly, both of them at ease, like their little betrayal was routine. And that steadied me. I closed the window. Not with a slam. Not with drama. Just a simple, final slide. I stood there for a moment longer, watching my reflection merge with the lights on the glass. I smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile that reached my eyes. It wasn't warm or forgiving. It was quiet. Sharp. The kind of smile you wear when something deep inside you shifts, not all at once, but decisively. The kind that says, I see you now. Clearly. I turned back to the room and picked up the spool of ribbon I'd been using to tie the garland. My hands moved automatically, wrapping and tucking, looping and snipping. The cinnamon in the air no longer felt inviting. The music in the background was just noise. But I still moved. I still finished decorating. Because that's what people like me do. We finish things. We follow through. Even when we've already decided we're done. It was strange how fast certainty arrived after years of doubt. For months, I'd been sensing something I couldn't name. A flicker in Kendra's tone. The way she stopped asking how my day was. The way her phone never left her side, even when she slept. I told myself it was stress. Business. Hormones. Anything but malice. Because to admit the truth, that she had been using me meant admitting I had been blind. That everything I built had cracks I'd refused to see. But that night, standing in front of the frosted window, I saw everything. And I made a choice. I would not break dishes. I would not beg. I would not ask her to explain the sentence she had no shame in saying. I would not become the dramatic husband who unraveled in front of his in-laws. No, I would become something else. Something quieter. Smarter. Stronger. That night, I went to bed next to her like everything was fine. I let her curl her body into mine like she still loved me. I kept my breathing steady. I even kissed her forehead. Because I knew something she didn't. This game? I was finally playing it too. And I wasn't playing to win her back. I was playing to walk away with everything she thought I wouldn't notice. The snow kept falling outside. A thin layer had already dusted the steps, the same ones I'd shoveled that morning while she slept in. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and make breakfast. I'd hand her coffee and listen to her talk about her new product launch. I'd nod at Bianca across the dining table and ask Logan about his latest real estate scam. I'd do it all. But tonight, as I lay there in the dark beside the woman I thought I knew, I let myself feel the final truth settle in. I was done being the silent investment. Let the snowfall cover our lies. Let the static play. 3 days passed, and I wore the same face each time I looked into a mirror, a perfectly calm mask. I hosted our Christmas gathering like nothing had shifted, like I hadn't heard my wife and her sister plotting my expiration date. I moved through the house with practiced ease, placing appetizers on trays, lighting candles, keeping the carols at a comfortable volume. To anyone watching, I was the ideal husband. Supportive, thoughtful, present. Only I knew that everything they saw was now strategy. Performance. The quiet rehearsal before the show unraveled. Warren, my father-in-law, handed me a glass of whiskey with his usual clap on the back. Still keeping everything running smooth, Marcus. I respect that. He grinned like we were allies. I accepted the glass and toasted like it didn't sting. He didn't know he was raising a glass to the man they thought would fund their ambitions before fading quietly into irrelevance. Simone, my mother-in-law, floated in next, complimenting the centerpiece I'd designed. You really know how to make something simple look adequate. The word landed like a paper cut. I smiled and thanked her. Bianca and her boyfriend Logan arrived late, laughing like they'd just closed a deal at my expense. Bianca, in a red dress that could have doubled as a warning sign, air kissed me on the cheek. Still the fixer, huh? She said, grabbing a champagne flute. I said nothing, just kept smiling. And then there was Kendra. She kissed me on the cheek with the ease of someone who had erased guilt from her vocabulary. She looked radiant, lipstick perfect, hair falling in waves, voice soft and sweet. Everything looks perfect, baby, she said, looping her arm through mine. The same mouth that had called me a placeholder just days before now called me love. I nearly choked on the irony. Dinner was served. I carved the turkey with precision, pouring wine, refilling glasses. I complimented Simone's overly salted stuffing. I laughed at Logan's lame joke about Bitcoin. I handed Kendra a napkin when hers dropped and brushed her knee like it still mattered. I gave a toast. To love, to family, and to shared futures, I said, watching them all closely. Kendra squeezed my hand. Bianca winked. Logan raised his glass. Warren smiled. None of them saw the fire beginning to burn in my chest. The proof was in the details, and they were slipping. Kendra started guarding her phone like a state secret. She took it with her into the bathroom, into the laundry room, even into the garage when she stepped out to take a call. At night, she'd turn the screen away from me, laugh quietly at texts, and then switch to Do Not Disturb like I was some stranger sharing her bed. Bianca became more brazen. She started calling me the fixer in front of others like it was a nickname I had chosen. Logan asked me questions that didn't feel casual, like, what's your FICO score these days? Or, what happens to your company if something happens to you? I played dumb. I gave half answers and chuckled like I didn't catch the tone beneath his curiosity. I started to document everything. Passwords, account activity, her schedule, phone habits. I created a digital trail not to confront her yet, but to confirm what I already knew. They were planning a financial ambush. I wasn't supposed to notice. I was supposed to smile and pay the bills. Stay in my lane. But I was done being predictable. One night, Kendra asked me what I thought of her new business plan. I think it's bold, I said, sipping tea I hadn't sweetened. I think it could really take off. She beamed, completely unaware that the version she showed me wasn't the version she'd submitted to her broker. I'd seen that one too. Jerome, my financial advisor, had forwarded it. In that version, I was a silent investor listed under passive assets. I studied her, the way she glowed in the praise, the way she hummed when she walked past me, like a woman who thought she was playing a fool who wouldn't catch the rules. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung. It was the arrogance. They thought I was stupid. They thought I wouldn't see the pieces falling into place. They thought I was so desperate to be loved that I'd ignore the signs of a setup. But they were wrong. I needed more. I needed the final piece, the one I could take to a courtroom, the one that would strip their facade completely. So I waited, smiled, played my part. Every look, every whispered conversation, every flash of guilt behind Kendra's eyes, it was fuel. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger was loud. And I couldn't afford loud. I needed precision. So I sat at dinner tables and laughed. I helped Simone with dishes. I offered to pay for Juno's train ticket. I even suggested a New Year's celebration. Kendra loved that. A vision dinner, she called it. Start the year with intention. Yes, that was exactly what I was doing. But mine had nothing to do with vision boards or candlelight intentions. Mine had to do with truth. And truth was coming. I waited until her breathing evened out, soft and slow, like it always did once she crossed into sleep. Kendra had this habit, one arm stretched under the pillow, the other resting over her waist, fingers twitching when she dreamed. I'd watched her like this for years. Back when I thought the way she curled toward me meant trust. Back when I believed in the stories she told me with her body, with her smile, with her "I love you" that now sounded like business transactions in hindsight. Tonight, I was watching her for a different reason. The clock read 1:47 a.m. The silence in the house was complete. No music, no footsteps, no laughter from Bianca downstairs. Just the hum of the fridge and the weight of what I was about to do. I slipped out of bed without a sound. Kendra stirred but didn't wake. She never did. Not when I was leaving early for a project. Not when I returned late from client meetings. She trusted that I would always be there, reliable, predictable, permanent. She had no idea that version of me had expired 3 days ago. Her phone was plugged in beside her side of the bed, face down. She always thought that was enough to protect her secrets. But she'd forgotten one thing. I built the security system in this house myself. I installed the biometric readers. I programmed the access settings, which meant she never updated the secondary fingerprint registry. My thumbprint still worked. I picked up the phone gently, thumb ready. One soft buzz under my skin, and it unlocked. I stared at the screen for a full 5 seconds before I moved. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe a last-minute change of heart. A message from Bianca saying, "We shouldn't be doing this." Or a deleted chat that meant second thoughts. Regret. There was none. The first thread was at the top, pinned, no less. Kendra and Bianca. No fake names. No codes. Just raw, casual cruelty, like they were gossiping about a coworker instead of tearing apart a man who had shared his life with them. Kendra, he just signed the documents. Loan gets approved in January. Bianca, good. Then we're done with him. He'll get over it. Losers always do. Below it, a laughing emoji. Then an attached voice note. I hesitated, thumb hovering. I tapped it. Bianca's voice came through, clear and sharp. Let's see his face when he finds out the house isn't even in his name. I paused the message and just stared at the wall for a moment, gripping the phone like it might dissolve in my hand. My breathing had slowed, not out of calm, but focus. I wasn't surprised anymore, but the weight of hearing it aloud. That made it real. I opened the attachments. Screenshots. A list of contractors I had hired and paid for renovations, annotated by Bianca like she was preparing a case against me. Get him to list these in the business taxes, one note read. We can flip it later under your name. I took the phone into the hallway, away from her sleeping form, and forwarded every message, image, and recording to my encrypted email. Then I opened my laptop and logged into the document vault I used for my contracts and architectural plans. I pulled up the property refinance folder, something I hadn't checked in weeks because, as I now realized, I trusted her. The documents were all there, neatly filed, reorganized. But the signature page, that's what hit me. I stared at my name on the co-signature line. I didn't sign this. I would never have signed this. It wasn't even my handwriting. It was a passable imitation, but to someone who'd signed thousands of blueprints, invoices, and legal statements, it was obvious. The loops in the M were wrong. The slope of the B in Blaine leaned too far left. I'd seen this technique before from a contractor who'd tried to scam a supplier once. The curve was unnatural. Mimicked, not owned. They had forged my signature. The house, my house, had been refinanced last month. And the new title? Registered solely in Kendra's name. I sat back in the office chair, heart thudding, not from fear, but clarity. The kind that replaces grief. The kind that lets you breathe even in betrayal. I stared at the screen for a long time, the cursor blinking next to my digital watermark like it was mocking me. They weren't even hiding it. They didn't think they needed to. Bianca had always treated me like a temporary fixture in their world. Logan followed her lead, lounging around like he had ownership of my living room. And Kendra, God, Kendra. She had rehearsed love so convincingly, I hadn't noticed the performance cues until now. She was an actress with years of awards, and I was the script she used to get the role she really wanted. I moved with purpose now. I exported the documents, locked them in a separate folder, and uploaded a backup to the cloud. I sent Jerome, my financial advisor, a brief message. Call me first thing. Emergency review. Then I encrypted everything and logged out. I returned the phone quietly to the nightstand. Kendra was still asleep. Peaceful. Dreaming, maybe, of what she'd do once the loan cleared and I was gone, discarded like a tool whose job was done. I got back in bed and stared at the ceiling. Not with anger. Not even with heartbreak. Just certainty. This wasn't a misstep. This was theft. Calculated. Intentional. Cold. And now, I had the proof. I could have woken her. Could have held the phone to her face and demanded she explain. I could have shouted, packed a bag, walked out like a storm. But I wouldn't give her that. I wouldn't give her any more control over the story. From now on, I wrote the ending. I turned on my side, facing away from her, and closed my eyes. Not to sleep. To plan. By sunrise, I was already out the door, coat collar turned up against the wind, briefcase in hand like it was just another Monday. But it wasn't just another day. It was the beginning of the correction, the quiet undoing of every string they'd tied around my wrist without my knowing. The betrayal had settled in my bones now, no longer a shock, but a sharp, cool certainty that moved with me. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was responding. Jerome Patel met me at his office, perched behind his polished glass desk in that crisp navy suit he always wore when the stakes were high. He didn't ask questions when I walked in. He just locked the door behind me, offered me a chair, and handed me a steaming mug of black coffee. Talk to me. I opened my laptop and let the dam break. Screenshots. Voice notes. Signatures. Property documents. Texts between Kendra and Bianca that laid bare their entire plan. I didn't flinch when Jerome winced at the messages or ran a hand down his face after the forged deed loaded. When he finally leaned back, his voice was low. Marcus, they played you. Hard. But you're not out yet. That was all I needed to hear. We spent the next 2 hours assembling what he called a financial freeze plan. Every joint account, every automatic transaction, every line of access Kendra might still have. I gave him permission to lock it all down. I updated beneficiaries, rewrote my will, even revoked power of attorney rights she never knew she still held. Jerome called in a favor and connected me with a forensic accountant. We'll run through your books. Every charge, every shared asset, every hidden transfer. If they so much as bought gas on your card, we'll know. I nodded, barely blinking. Good. I want a paper trail long enough to wrap around their lies 3 times. After that, I called Robert Lynn, my lawyer for business dealings, not family law, but sharp enough to connect me to the best in the city. Robert's assistant had me on a call within the hour. I told her only the facts. No emotion. No story. Just the truth and the evidence. She asked if I was safe. I told her I was. But inside, I knew the real answer. I was safer now than I'd been in years. By mid-afternoon, I'd secured everything I could financially. The last piece was physical separation. I couldn't just storm out. I needed an exit that gave me control, not a scene. So I did what I'd always done. I planned. I found a penthouse suite across the city under a different name. Fully furnished. Month-to-month lease. Quiet. No paper trail linked to my home address. I paid for 6 months in advance, cash, through my LLC. When the concierge asked if I wanted anything special stocked in the kitchen, I said, only peace. Back at the house, I arrived with groceries like nothing had changed. Bianca was in the living room, pretending to read a business magazine upside down. Logan was on the couch, laughing at something on his phone. I walked past them without a word. In the kitchen, Kendra looked up from her laptop. You're home early. Thought I'd make cocoa, I said, already pulling down the mugs. You've been working so hard. She smiled, suspiciously soft. That's sweet, babe. I made 3 cups, one for her, one for Bianca, and one for me. I handed hers over with extra whipped cream, just the way she liked it. She didn't even blink. It never occurred to her that I'd found the messages, that I'd seen the documents, that I'd already moved most of my valuables out during late meetings and business trips over the last few weeks. I sat beside her, kissed her cheek, and said, "By the way, your proposal for the business loan? It's genius." Her eyes lit up. "You really think so?" I nodded. "Yeah. You're good at this, Kendra. You know how to make things look real." She didn't catch the double meaning. Not yet. She just smiled and leaned into my side like we were still whole. Bianca walked in, phone in hand. "We out of marshmallows?" "In the pantry," I said, sipping my cocoa. "Second shelf. I organized it yesterday." She rolled her eyes but went. As she did, I watched Kendra slide her phone off the counter and quickly turn the screen away. Classic. They thought they were running this game. That I was just a sentimental fool too blinded by tradition and loved to notice I was being drained. But the only reason they got this far was because I let them. I gave them room, time, freedom. And now, I was reclaiming all of it. That night, as they toasted to opportunities and a profitable new year, I raised my glass and smiled. Because what they didn't realize, what they never considered, was that I was listening now. Not with hope, not with fear, but with a plan. I didn't need revenge. I needed proof. And it was coming. Friday morning started the same way it always did in our house, sunlight bleeding through sheer curtains, the quiet hum of the heat kicking on, and the sound of Kendra humming in the bathroom as she applied her makeup. She always took her time on Fridays. It wasn't because we had plans. It was because Fridays were when Logan usually came by to talk business with Bianca, and Kendra liked to be seen at her best when there were potential investors, real or imaginary, within earshot. I brought her a cup of coffee just how she liked it, 2 sugars, splash of almond milk, cinnamon dusted on top. She thanked me, still humming. She didn't notice the micro-recorder clipped beneath the kitchen island, tucked behind the panel where the cabinetry met the wood trim. It was the size of a lipstick, but powerful enough to pick up the rustle of a napkin. I tested it twice the night before using fake conversations over the phone. The audio came through crisp and clear. It was ready, and so was I. I made a show of grabbing the grocery list, tapping my keys twice on the counter like I always did, and calling out, "Back in 30. Kendra barely looked up. Bianca waved lazily from the dining room, already scrolling her phone, nails tapping like a metronome. I pulled out of the driveway and drove 2 blocks before circling back around, parking behind the elementary school where I used to coach youth soccer. My car had Bluetooth. My AirPods connected instantly to the recorder's live stream. And just like that, I was inside the house without being there. Silence at first. Then the soft sound of a cupboard opening, mugs clinking, Bianca's exaggerated sigh. "You know he made me cocoa the other day," she said. Kendra laughed. "He's still trying." Bianca snorted. "Trying to what?" "Be relevant. Trying to pretend I don't already have a future without him." Kendra's voice was syrupy sweet, like she was lounging on a throne of her own confidence. "Once that loan clears in January, we wire the funds, and he's officially obsolete. You told the lawyer, right?" Bianca asked. "About dividing his assets?" "Quietly," Kendra said. "I told her I wanted to keep it discreet. If we play it right, I'll get half of the business and a clean exit." A chair scraped. I imagined Bianca leaning in, pouring herself another coffee. "And the house?" "Oh, honey," Kendra said with a chuckle that made my skin crawl. "That title's already in my name. He just doesn't know it yet." My grip tightened on the steering wheel, not from surprise. I'd seen the paperwork, but from how casually they spoke about it. I'd been a project to them. A step. A bridge. And now I was a checklist item waiting to be crossed off. Bianca laughed. "What if he finds out?" "He won't. Not until it's too late. Besides, even if he does, what's he gonna do? Cry into his cocoa?" Both of them laughed. That's when it happened. Kendra's voice softened, changed pitch. "Honestly, sometimes I wonder if he even notices anymore. Like, I could be planning a funeral for our marriage, and he'd just show up with centerpieces." Bianca muttered something about chronic nice guy syndrome. Kendra didn't disagree. "He's used to being ignored. He just folds himself into silence." I turned the recorder off. Not because I couldn't take more, but because I didn't need more. I had enough. The audio file was time-stamped, saved, backed up 3 times. Once to a secure folder on my business server, once on a private cloud, and once to the USB drive I wore around my neck like a pendant. When I walked back into the house, they were already in the living room, watching a baking show like nothing had happened. Kendra glanced over her shoulder. "Forgot something?" "Yeah," I said easily, holding up a box of cookies I'd picked up on the way back. "Thought we could use a little something sweet." She smiled. "You always think of everything." I smiled back. Yeah, I really do. The rest of the day passed like a dress rehearsal. I went through the motions, cleared emails, responded to a client inquiry, helped Kendra update a presentation template she was sending to her lender. I even offered to give feedback on her pitch deck. You really don't have to, she said, tilting her head. I shrugged. I want to. We're partners, right? She gave a little nod, like I'd passed some sort of trust test she didn't realize I already knew she'd failed. That night, after dinner, she curled up beside me on the couch and asked if I wanted to plan our New Year's celebration. Something classy, she said. We should invite the whole family. Warren loves those family dinner speeches you do. Maybe you can do another one. I said, sure. I'll prepare something special. Because I would. And it wouldn't be a toast. It would be a reckoning. By the time she fell asleep, I had already clipped the audio file and labeled it Kitchen Confession _DEC 22. I emailed it to my lawyer, to Jerome, and to myself again. Then I slid the USB drive into its case and placed it beside my wallet on the nightstand. I lay there for a long time in the dark, listening to her breathe, wondering if she'd ever felt guilty. Wondering if, at any point, she had considered me human instead of useful. If she had ever looked at the man beside her and thought, this is someone I want to build with, not, this is someone I can build on. But the answer didn't matter anymore. Because the next move was mine. And it was already in motion. The first week of January, I pitched it like a gift, a New Year family vision dinner. Kendra lit up like I'd handed her the deed to a yacht. We should do it at Belridge, she said instantly. It's where we got engaged. Everyone loves that place. I nodded like the memory was still sweet, though now it tasted like ash. Perfect, I said, already booking the private dining room before she finished her sentence. I paid in full, requested AV equipment, pre-approved the menu, and reserved an extra seat. Not for a guest. For the truth. I invited everyone. Kendra, Bianca, Logan, Warren, and Simone. Even Juno, her peppermint schnapps-smelling cousin, whose voice always reminded me of bubble wrap popping. I framed it like a celebration of family growth and shared purpose. Kendra even helped design the email invitation, complete with gold script and a quote she found on Pinterest. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today. Indeed it does. The day of the dinner, I dressed deliberately. A crisp black suit, no tie, charcoal shirt, simple cufflinks. The kind of look that said calm, not flashy. In control. I arrived an hour early to set up. The staff was helpful, cordial, polite, unaware they were laying the stage for something far more surgical than sentimental. I handed off the USB drive and tested the projector myself. Slide by slide, click by click, I rehearsed what they would see. It started innocently, photos of holidays past, smiling faces, group shots. Then came a few text excerpts, cropped to look decorative at first. Then darker, deeper, more specific. By the third slide, it would be undeniable. Kendra's messages, Bianca's laughter, the voice note, the forged deed, loan papers with my signature printed on a date I was in St. Louis, screenshots, emails, the full paper trail. I layered them slowly. Timelines, receipts, each one building toward the final document, the bank loan application, listing my name as guarantor for a business I had never agreed to fund. It was elegant, almost cinematic. At 6:59, the room buzzed with arrival. Kendra wore emerald green, her confidence color, as she called it. She kissed me on the cheek, all charm and public affection. Bianca had on too much perfume and a smug grin. Logan's handshake was weak. Warren and Simone smiled tightly, tension already riding the air like static. Juno clinked her glass for no reason at all. We dined on seared salmon, risotto, and wine that I had pre-approved without a word from anyone. They toasted to growth, to ambition, to Kendra's big year. I listened. I nodded. I laughed once or twice. But mostly, I waited. When dessert was served, Kendra placed her hand over mine. Honey, you wanted to share something? Yes, I said, rising slowly. I put together a little slideshow. Just a few memories, a little vision casting. Something for us all to take into the new year. She beamed. You always do the sweetest things. I smiled. Yeah, I do. The first slide flashed. A picture of Kendra and me at Belridge, the night we got engaged. Everyone awed. Kendra glanced at me lovingly. The next slide, a holiday group shot from last year. Bianca raised her glass. Look at us. Then the third slide appeared. A text message. Kendra's name at the top. The sentence glowing white on dark. just until he pays off the house and co-signs my business loan. The room fell into a hush. Warren furrowed his brow. Simone blinked. Bianca leaned forward, her smile faltering. Kendra didn't move. I clicked to the next slide. Bianca's reply. Good. Then we're done with him. I kept going. The voice note. The snide laughter. The scanned deed. Kendra's signature. Then mine, shown side by side with my actual signature on legal documents. A clear mismatch. A blatant forgery. The final slide. A PDF of the loan application. Highlighted sections showing I'd been listed as a financial backer. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. Then silence. Bianca knocked over her wine glass. Logan muttered, shit. Kendra's voice came out hoarse. What is this? I turned to Logan. Still want your share? I asked, calm and flat. Bianca stood. This is a setup. I tilted my head. No, Bianca. This was a setup. I'm just showing the blueprint. Simone gasped. Warren stood but didn't speak. His face was already turning red. Kendra tried to reach for the laptop, but I blocked her with one smooth movement. Don't, I said quietly. We're not done yet. That's when Robert Lynn walked in. Calm, pressed suit, a manila envelope in his hand. He walked straight to Kendra and handed her a document. She blinked at the title. Cease and desist, I explained. Filed this morning. Fraud, forgery, breach of trust. And by the way, all our joint accounts? Frozen. Kendra's mouth opened, but nothing came out. I turned back to the others. This house? The renovations? The transactions? All documented. All traceable. And next week, a forensic audit begins. Bianca turned to Logan. Say something. He shook his head. I told you not to trust him. He's quiet. Not stupid. I didn't wait for a response. I picked up my coat and walked out the door, the cold air rushing against my face like freedom. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Truth did the talking for me. The room exploded the moment I walked out. I heard it from the hallway, the high-pitched clamor of broken reputations and fraying masks. Kendra shouting over Bianca's indignation. Warren barking demands for explanations. Simone's voice, trembling, confused, asking if this was some kind of joke. I didn't stay to listen. I didn't need to. The deck they'd built, fragile, smug, expensive, was finally collapsing under the weight of their own words. A house of cards, tumbling in perfect sequence. Outside, the night air cut like glass. It didn't bother me. For the first time in months, maybe longer, I felt clean. Untangled. I slipped into the car, placed my coat over the passenger seat, and sat there for a moment with both hands on the wheel. No anger. No heartbreak. Just the distinct satisfaction of a man who had finally stopped bleeding into people who never intended to hold him. The door behind me burst open. Heavy footsteps pounded the concrete. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Marcus. Kendra's voice cracked. Wait. I let the silence answer her. She caught up, breath ragged, heels clacking unevenly. She looked like a woman unraveling, dress half zipped in the back, mascara starting to smudge beneath the floodlights. You can't just walk away, she said, fists clenched at her sides. I turned my head slowly. Why not? You were planning to do the same. Only without the courtesy of a goodbye. That's not fair. No, I said. It's not. And yet here we are. She took a step closer. We can fix this. That actually made me laugh. Not loud, just a breath of disbelief. Fix what? The fraud? The lies? The forged documents? Tell me, Kendra, which part do we glue back together? The part where you and your sister joked about me being irrelevant, or the part where you sold off a future I thought we were building together? Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. And that silence, that tiny gap, was all the answer I needed. Behind her, the rest of the family began to spill out, one by one. Warren shouting into his phone. Simone sitting down on the stone steps, dazed. Bianca stalking away from Logan, who stood off to the side like he didn't recognize any of them. He caught my eye. Nodded once. I didn't return it. Robert Lynn walked up beside me and handed me a sealed folder. Just spoke with the fraud division. They've accepted the case. Expect contact by Monday. Appreciate it, I said, tucking the folder into my briefcase. You ready for phase 2? He asked. I glanced over at Kendra. Her arms had dropped. Her posture had slumped. For once, she looked small in a room where she usually took up all the oxygen. Yeah, I said. I'm ready. By the time I got home, well, to the house that used to feel like home, it was after 10 p.m. Everything I needed was already packed. I'd spent weeks quietly moving out piece by piece. A framed photo here. My tools there. The watch my father gave me. The antique drafting compass I kept in my office. Anything I valued was long gone, already sitting safely in my penthouse, waiting. I walked through the rooms like a final inspection. Not nostalgic, not angry, just thorough. The dining room table I refinished by hand. The shelves I installed when Kendra said she wanted a more curated aesthetic. The backsplash in the kitchen, which took 3 weekends and a sprained wrist. All of it stayed. Let her keep it. Let her decorate her victory lap with borrowed craftsmanship. Upstairs, I placed a single envelope on the bed. Inside was a letter, my last communication without a lawyer. Short. Final. You will hear from my legal team by Monday. Do not contact me directly. I wish you peace. Nothing else needed to be said. I locked the front door behind me for the last time. No dramatic pause. No final glance. The penthouse was silent when I arrived. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a painting. The skyline glittered, unapologetic and alive. I poured myself a drink, just one, and sat by the window without turning on the lights. The city didn't care what I'd lost, but it had room for what I'd become. My phone buzzed. Kendra. Again. She had already called 12 times since the reveal. Texted another 8. The latest one read, I didn't mean to hurt you. It just got complicated. Please, let's talk. I forwarded it to Robert without replying. Then came Bianca. You think you're untouchable now? You think you won't go down with us? Delete. Then Logan. I didn't know how far they were going. I stayed out of it. I didn't care. He wasn't my problem. None of them were. This was the part they never saw coming. They thought quiet meant weak. But quiet is the place where plans are born, where strategy takes root, where people like me gather every word, every thread, and turn silence into strength. They used me like scaffolding. Now they were watching the structure collapse without understanding why it stood in the first place. I took a sip of whiskey and leaned back, letting the weight of the evening settle into the expensive fabric of the chair. I felt lighter. Not free, not yet, but unburdened. The reckoning had begun, and I wasn't looking back. By the time the sun touched the horizon, I was gone. Not in a rush. Not with bags thrown together at the last minute. Everything had been carefully orchestrated in the weeks leading up to that morning. The clothes I truly wore. The tools I used. The files that mattered. The photo of my mother and I at my college graduation, back when I still believed hard work alone made you safe. They were all long removed. Moved in silence, the way I had lived too much of this marriage. The house was no longer mine. It was a crime scene built on affection repurposed as manipulation. I left behind the illusion of comfort. The curated furniture. The wine glasses Kendra insisted we display, though we only used them twice a year. The framed photo on the mantle from our 4th anniversary trip to Charleston, where she made me pose for 10 minutes until the light hit her just right. I left it all. Not because it didn't matter, some of it once did, but because it no longer held meaning. Objects don't mourn you when you leave. People barely do either. The penthouse greeted me like an exhale. Clean lines. Soft grays. A refrigerator humming with quiet purpose. Floor-to-ceiling glass that didn't pretend to be anything but transparent. No one had ever lied in this space. Not yet. That mattered more to me now than luxury ever did. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Kendra. Call number 21. I watched the screen light up, her name glowing as if that meant something. I didn't answer. The voice messages followed like clockwork. First, the urgent one. Marcus, please. Just pick up. Let me explain. Then the teary one. I messed up. I know I did. But I never stopped loving you. That was real. You were real to me. And finally, the angry one. You're not a saint, Marcus. Don't act like this is all on me. You always made it easy to ignore you. I forwarded all 3 to Robert. I didn't respond to any of them. Bianca was next. No calls, just a string of texts. You made your point. Hope it was worth it. Just remember, you started this. That one made me pause, not because it struck a nerve, but because it revealed just how delusional she was. I hadn't started anything. I had simply stopped pretending. Stopped feeding the very machine that used to grind me down. Then came Logan. His tone was different. Hesitant. Casual, like we were old teammates. Didn't know it would go that far, man. I was just along for the ride. If you ever want to talk, I'm around. I blocked his number. Let them spiral. Let them reach for the man they thought would never walk away. I was done offering parts of myself as bandages for wounds they kept reopening. There was a time I'd have tried to de-escalate things, tried to find middle ground, tried to salvage dignity from a mess someone else made. But not anymore. I wasn't interested in closure. I was building distance. Brick by intentional brick. I spent the afternoon setting up the final layers of protection, new passwords, two-factor authentication, security freezes on all credit lines. I sent updated access codes to my legal and financial teams. I changed my emergency contact to my sister, who had always seen more than she let on. I even opened a new checking account under my LLC and transferred the funds I'd pulled before the freeze. My name, my control. Every step felt like another thread cut from the web they'd spun around me. Kendra sent one last message before evening fell. A photo. Us, early days. At a music festival. I was in sunglasses. She wore her hair natural and wild, cheeks flushed from the heat. We were smiling. I looked happy. Underneath, she wrote, "Was none of it real?" I stared at it longer than I expected. Then I deleted it. Because here's the truth. Maybe parts were real. Maybe there were moments where she loved me in her way. But love without respect is just sentiment. Love that uses, manipulates, schemes, it's not love at all. It's convenience wearing a borrowed face. The evening was quiet. I cooked for myself, nothing fancy, just grilled chicken and seasoned rice. No one asked for substitutions. No one criticized my plating. I sat at the counter and ate in silence, watching the city lights blink on one by one. I felt the stillness settle into me, not emptiness, but peace. The kind that doesn't beg for company. The kind that doesn't apologize for solitude. I didn't check my phone again. I didn't need to. Let them scream. Let them cry. Let them twist stories in rooms I no longer occupy. I wasn't theirs anymore. And come Monday, the world would know that officially. Legally. Permanently. I sipped a glass of water, not wine, and stared at my reflection in the window. The man looking back at me wasn't smiling. But he wasn't broken, either. He was still standing. And finally, he was free. Courtroom hallways have a way of draining color from everything. The walls are beige, the floors sterile, the lighting flat and judgmental. No matter how much money someone throws into the decor, it still smells faintly of old paper and tension. I walked through those halls wearing my best suit, not for them, but for me. Dark gray, tailored, clean lines. No need for flash. Just precision. Just clarity. That's what the day was about. Kendra stood across from me, flanked by her attorney. A younger man with a smile too polished for the gravity of the case. She avoided my eyes. She had cut her hair since I last saw her, styled sharper, more executive. Fitting. The business she built with borrowed trust was on the line now. She looked like she was holding her breath every time the elevator dinged. Bianca arrived next. She wore sunglasses indoors. The kind of move people make when they still think they're hiding. She looked rattled, like she had expected this to blow over with a public apology and maybe a half-hearted statement about miscommunication. Logan wasn't with her. He ghosted the whole situation the minute I served his name in the evidence list. That was smart. It wouldn't save him, but it would buy him silence. My lawyer, Robert Lynn, was as composed as ever. He carried a binder with every document we had compiled over the past few months, email threads, audio files, forged contracts, the notarized forensic audit showing how Kendra moved funds behind my back. He didn't look nervous. He looked like a man presenting math. And betrayal, once recorded, is simple math. The hearing began just after 10. The courtroom was small, private. No media, no jury. Just a judge, a clerk, and the unraveling of a marriage that had, for years, existed on paper more than in practice. Kendra's lawyer opened with an emotional plea about misunderstandings and partnership, claiming that the business decisions were ambitious missteps, not criminal intent. He used words like entrepreneurial zeal and relational breakdown. Then Robert stood. He didn't shout. He didn't grandstand. He presented facts like he was laying bricks. This, he said, holding up the forged signature, is not entrepreneurial zeal. It is criminal fraud. He played the voice recording, the one from the kitchen. Kendra's voice rang out, confident and calm. Once he wires the money, we ghost him. The courtroom went still. He showed the revised property deed. Kendra's name alone, filed just after the loan documents with my forged signature. He presented a bank statement showing transfers between our joint account and a hidden business account set up under Bianca's name. The judge didn't react much, but his silence was louder than Kendra's lawyer's entire opening. When it was her turn to speak, Kendra stood. She looked small for the first time. Her voice was low. "I never meant to hurt him," she said. "Marcus has always been good. I lost myself in pressure. Expectations. I thought if I built something fast, we could fix everything else later." She tried to cry, but the room didn't move, because the damage was already recorded. Signed. Stamped. Witnessed. In the end, the ruling was swift. The court awarded me 80% of our marital assets. Full control of my business, as Kendra's fraudulent involvement disqualified her claims. A lien was placed on the house. My renovation receipts, tracked hours, and purchases had made it easy to prove contribution. The judge labeled the financial manipulation as deliberate and exploitative. Kendra would also be required to pay restitution for the unauthorized business account transfer. As for Bianca, she was served separately. Defamation, fraud, civil penalties pending. They tried to appeal to emotion once more. But the law doesn't care about crocodile tears. The law cares about paper, about proof, and I had brought all of it. We exited into the hallway. Kendra sat on the bench, face buried in her hands. Her lawyer stood awkwardly nearby, clearly deciding how quickly he could remove himself from the wreckage. She looked up as I passed. "Marcus." I didn't stop. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter, exactly, but real, like I had finally stepped out of someone else's lie and into my own life. The kind I could trust again, one I would build deliberately, without apology. I had a meeting to get to. Not revenge, not celebration, just the next chapter, because I had already demolished the old house. Now it was time to lay a new foundation. It didn't happen all at once, the healing, the letting go, the rebuilding. It came in pieces, slow and stubborn. Like pulling nails out of old wood, the kind you once believed was strong enough to build a home on. I didn't wake up one morning full of peace and clarity. I woke up groggy, disoriented, in a new bed that didn't creak when I turned over, with a view of the skyline instead of the backyard I used to mow every Sunday. It was quiet. Not the silence of tension or avoidance, but the kind that didn't ask for anything, that didn't weigh my worth by how many people I'd pleased that day. The first few weeks after court passed in waves of recalibration. I closed the accounts I no longer needed. I unsubscribed from newsletters I had signed up for at Kendra's insistence, minimalist home decor, couples retreats, wine tastings. I donated half my wardrobe, not out of spite, just clarity. It was strange how many of my clothes had been chosen for me, outfits that fit her image of me more than me. I started walking again, every morning, just before the city woke up. No music, no calls, just me and the rhythm of footsteps over pavement. The city had a different texture in those early hours, less performative, more honest. I passed shopkeepers unlocking their gates, joggers who nodded without smiling, bakers setting out trays of bread behind fogged-up windows. I liked that. The simplicity of it. The fact that no one needed me to be anything. By February, I'd taken on a part-time teaching role at a local trade school. Architectural design, project management, nothing glamorous, but grounded. Real. The students were hungry to learn, and their questions reminded me why I fell in love with building in the first place. Not for the contracts, not even for the prestige, but because I liked watching something rise out of nothing. Watching people walk through a structure that had once lived only in my mind. One of my students, a quiet kid named Terrell, stayed after class one day. He asked how you know when a foundation's no longer safe to build on. I gave him the technical answer first, about cracks, stress points, misalignment, but then I paused. Sometimes, I said, you don't see it until the walls start shifting. Until you realize the structure you trusted is pushing you out 1 inch at a time. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Maybe we both did. I stopped avoiding the holidays. Stopped dreading the reminders. When March arrived and the early signs of spring crept into the air, I walked past a display of string lights in a hardware store and bought a few boxes. The same kind I used to hang above the patio window. Not out of nostalgia, but because I still believed in light. Even if I had once hung it for people who stood in the shadows and whispered against me. I strung them up on my penthouse balcony one Saturday afternoon. Took my time. Checked the wiring. Made sure each bulb was anchored. When they flickered to life that evening, I didn't feel pain. I felt presence. That night, I made dinner from scratch, grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, jasmine rice. I set a plate across from me even though no one was joining. Old habit, maybe. Or maybe I was practicing what it looked like to make room for someone new. Not romantically. Just Eventually, someone who saw me. All of me. Not just what I could fund or fix. Kendra emailed a few more times. The messages got shorter, more muted. I forwarded them all to Robert without reading them fully. Bianca tried to comment on one of my business's social media posts. The account blocked her automatically. Logan disappeared entirely. They were no longer characters in my story, just names in a file. A cautionary footnote in a life that was becoming mine again. I began mentoring younger entrepreneurs, people with big ideas and small budgets. I listened, advised, invested, not in dollars, but time. They asked me how to protect themselves, how to know who to trust. I told them the truth. Listen to what people say when they think you're not listening. That's who they really are. Sometimes they nodded. Sometimes they looked like it hurt to hear. It should. Growth is painful, but it's also necessary. Spring rolled into summer quietly. The city warmed up. The balconies filled with laughter and soft jazz. I started traveling a little. Day trips to the coast. A weekend in the mountains. Places Kendra once said were too simple for her taste. I liked the quiet. The absence of performance. I liked being no one to everyone I passed. Every so often, I'd see couples walking hand in hand, or families laughing over shared fries on a patio. I didn't flinch. I didn't envy. I watched. Observed. Grateful that I could feel the weight of absence without mistaking it for loneliness. I built routines. Cleaned on Sundays. Cooked on Thursdays. Volunteered at a community housing nonprofit twice a month. They asked if I wanted a plaque when I made a donation to help restore a women's shelter. I said no. I didn't need my name on anything anymore. I just wanted things to stand. December came again. The air was cold, but not cruel. I bought a tree. A modest one. Decorated it with warm lights and ornaments I picked myself. Not for tradition. For peace. I didn't open the garden window. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't need to. Some things, once heard, stay with you. They shape you, but they don't have to define you. That garden window taught me everything I needed to know about what was broken. But this place, the balcony, the quiet kitchen, the soft hum of morning, this was where I rebuilt. And this time, every brick, every light, every breath was mine.